Hey everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, the host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are, 3/4 of the way through our Protectors and Defenders Month, sponsored by Dragonfly. And for anybody that missed any of our episodes so far, they've been amazing. We had Cam Shell, CEO of Dragonfly, to kick off this month. And then we had Bob Blakely. He is with Team 8. They are a venture capital firm focused on cybersecurity at the nexus of advanced air mobility, healthcare, and uncrewed aircraft systems. So if you missed any of those, check them out. They're all on AUVSI's YouTube channel. And today we have with us Miriam Foxx, a captain at Chula Vista Police Department. When you think about protectors and defenders, I think of someone like Miriam, because the first boots on the ground in the United States when something goes down are brothers and sisters in blue. And we are so excited to have you here with us here today, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, and if you're watching this show, my assumption is you know all about Chula Vista PD, because they have been really the pioneers in employing drones in support of law enforcement and in support of our communities. When you think of the term drone as first responder, they literally coined the phrase. Okay, so that's basically who we have here with us today. And so please, please, please say hello in the chat, engage with us, Miriam. It is so great to have you here. And I want to talk about you first, because you have had a really stellar career. And when I think about people that have been in the military, it's usually, you were in the military and then went into the police department. So tell us about that journey.
Yes, so I'm originally from New York. And when I was in high school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I had a lot of family members that were in the military. My dad was in the Navy. Uncles were in the Marine Corps. So for me, I just wanted to see the world, kind of figure it out. And so I decided to join the Navy. And it was absolutely the best decision I ever made. So I was in the Navy. I was active duty for 8.5 years before I got hired by the police department, and continued my time and ended up retiring from the Navy Reserve after 22 years of combined active and reserve service. While I was in the Navy, I initially came in, I was enlisted, and I did visual communications. I was a signalman, and then I switched over to the Navy's version of military police, which they call Master at Arms. And so that's where I got bit by the law enforcement bug and fell in love with helping people, being there, providing that, service to the community, in the military. And then I just transitioned that to civilian world. So that's where I got bit by the law enforcement bug, my love for helping people. And then when I was transitioning to the civilian world, loved being in the Navy. So I stayed in the Navy Reserves. And when I got hired by Chula Vista PD. And so now I'm a captain here at the police department. I've been at the department this will be my 25th year. And
Wow.
so loving it. I love my career. I've had it's been a great career. I'm happy. I'm not done yet. I've got 7 more years to go. But I've been blessed to have done so many different things in my organization. I was a stream team gang officer. I was a homicide detective, a property crime supervisor in charge of property crimes investigations. I worked in internal affairs, became a drone pilot, which was pretty awesome, and then got involved with our UAS DFR program. And so now I'm the captain in charge of investigations and our drone program.
Wow. So a lot going on there. So number one, thank you for your service and your continued service, of course. Wow. We got to get you on the leadership podcast. That's a whole nother story. We're going to dig into some at some point, but um, drones, UAS, as you mentioned, about when did you start getting involved in drones with the Chula Vista PD?
So I got involved about 2 years ago because I'm getting ready to take my recurrent test for my pilot, for my Part 107. So about 2 years ago, I was selected. I was a lieutenant at the time, and there was some movement, and the position opened up to be the lieutenant over the UAS program, which is our field deployment plus our DFR, drones of first responder part of the program. And I jumped at the idea. I just thought it was so interesting, different. In our department, we hear about our program, we hear all the great things, but once you get into the program, it is just amazing. And so, for law enforcement, we kind of thrive on doing something different every day. And so it just attracted me to it. And I was able to get my pilot's license, my Part 107. And so that's how I kind of fell into it. But I was very excited, and it was definitely more than what I would have expected.
Chula Vista PD was one of the original law enforcement agencies to start using drones. And I want to roll a picture here of one of your officers flying a drone, or actually, I think it's a picture. There we go. So I know this is maybe one of your officers getting trained on the drone here. Tell us a little bit about this.
That's right. So we have a team of about 25 pilots that are collateral duty Part 107 pilots. So they also train for DFR. So we have two full-time pilots. We fly for our drones, the first responder program. We fly 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. We respond to calls for service. And so we also, those two pilots are part full-time, but if they need to leave the office, then we would, or take time off, our field pilot, our collateral duty pilots can jump in. So this is a pilot, one of our pilots, Agent Natalie Garnsey, who is training on DFR up on our rooftop where our piloting commands are with our Sergeant Dustin Bruzy.
Very cool. I'm going to peel back DFR in a minute, but let's talk our origin story first, because when you jumped into the program 2 years ago and got your Part 107 and started really getting involved in it, that program was really underway. And if I recall, by the way, everybody, Miriam had an amazing conversation with Maggie Schuster in our clubhouse last Thursday. If you missed that, we'll go ahead and get you that link to listen to that on replay. Great stuff. But I remember you saying that Fritz Reber, who's now a Skydio, was a captain at Chula Vista at the time, and was really one of the, let's just call it founders, if you will, of the program. It was a really cool origin story as to why that light bulb came on, like, hey, we should be using drones here. Can you share with us a little bit about that story?
Absolutely. And it is actually a really kind of unique story. So our chief, now Chief Roxana Kennedy, was she we had a neighboring agency that had an officer involved shooting involving a mentally ill subject. Unfortunately, the call was someone possibly mentally ill, having some sort of breakdown or issue. The officer gets there, doesn't know a lot of the specifics. The subject ends up having something shining in their hands, looks like a weapon, turns towards the officer, and unfortunately, there's a use of force situation. The officer shoots the subject, and the subject does not survive. And so our chief came to the lieutenants at the time and said, "Hey, how can we avoid that situation?" Because it seemed like the officer reacted to what we are trained to do. And so we started talking about, hey, what if that officer had a set of eyes ahead of time, watching the subject, kind of maybe seeing exactly what was going on, coming up with a better plan, so then maybe the officer wouldn't have gone in. And we're not trying to second guess what the officer did, but how could we avoid that in the future? Because that's a natural reaction based on their training and experience. Right. So what we started was using the COPS model, the POP project model of scanning, analysis, response, and assessment, the SARA model. We actually started putting officers in plain clothes unmarked vehicles with their mobile data computer and a radio, and they would go ahead to calls and they would call out what was going on to the marked and uniformed officers that were also responding. So they wouldn't break their cover, they would just be there to provide information and situational awareness. So when the officers were responding and when they would get en route or get on scene, they would come up with a better plan, have more time to react, so we're not being forced to use any type of use of force. And so that program, we did that for about several months, very successful. We noticed the difference where our officers had more time to react. We weren't having to use force as often, which was obviously the best thing. And so then Fritz Weber, who is now a retired captain, but he was a lieutenant at the time, he came up with the idea, well, hey, why don't we take this program even further and try it with drones? And so that was basically birth of our Drones First Responder program. So we would deploy drones ahead of a marked units or ground units getting on scene, live stream the footage to officers, and be able to get that time to look at the situation. So if you have a call or subject with a weapon, we actually can get on scene, find the subject, figure out exactly what they have, come up with a better plan, because we don't want to have to use force. And if we can de-escalate the situation because we have more information, then we can take more time, find a better solution, and resolve it without having to use force if we don't have to.
Yeah, I remember you and Maggie were talking about a scenario where an individual had what looked like a gun in their, like it really looked like a gun. So I imagine if it was just your officer in surveilling in from a car, he or she would say that is a gun, but then the drone was able to zoom in and realize, and you were all able to realize it was a lighter that was.
That's right. That's right.
You know, so amazing so what that was that about 2017, Miriam, or 2018?
That was a couple of years ago. Actually, about 2019. Video is actually on our website, chulastp.org. That was a taco shop, middle of the day, multiple 911 calls of a subject with a weapon, with a gun, waving it around, talking to himself. Our DFR drone got overhead, was able to zoom in with that fantastic camera, because it's all about the camera, and we were able to see what looked like a weapon. And so the DFR pilot told units, hey, let me see what he's doing as they're approaching. And a couple of minutes in, we're watching the video. He then takes what looks like it's a shiny shaped gun, a gun that's shaped, and it ends up being a cigarette lighter, and lights the cigarette. And so traditional policing, we would have gone in, somebody with a gun, multiple calls. Right. And then what do people do when they see police? They turn and they face you, and now they're pointing what looks like a weapon. And they did. It looked like a gun, but it happened to be a cigarette lighter.
Unbelievable.
So it's just, and we have numerous scenarios and calls where, we get there and we realize it's not exactly what it's initially called in to be. And, the community doesn't know. They see things and they interpret things, but then there's the law and what we can and legally can't do. But it just helps us to really, we could consider it a huge de-escalation tool, because we're able to de-escalate the situation, take some time, figure out what we have, and then make the best decision for the community, for the people we're contacting, and for our officers.
Yes, absolutely. And that particular incident may have been in 2019, but your program with the drones really started, what, in 2017? So
2017, that's right.
Yes.
So 2017, we started in 2018 flying, but we started a year before that in 2017 with our community outreach. That was the one big thing, that we wanted to make sure that our community knew what we were thinking about doing, and we wanted to get input from our community. We also met with civic groups to kind of get what are the things that they would be concerned about. And so, because we wanted to make sure, hey, we work for our community and we understand that our community is who we're trying to protect. And we wanted them to know, before we do this, what are your concerns? And so we did a lot of that outreach a year in advance. We did city council meetings, we did some public forums. And so if any police department or any law enforcement agency is looking to start this type of program, the community outreach is important because obviously we serve our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how transparent, first of all, the fact that you took a year to really communicate with the community and not just telegraph to them we're going to do this, but to also receive feedback from them. And I imagine, Miriam, some of that feedback was we just want information. You know, we want to know kind of what's happening. So when we see one of your drones, we're not concerned that it's spying on people. And so as a result, over time, you guys created a pretty awesome, transparent dashboard. I want to pop that image up. Walk us through what we're seeing here.
So this dashboard regularly it refreshes every so many minutes from our actual flights, our DFR flights. So if you see the top right, you see total calls responded. That's just since from 2018, and we're a little higher today. This was as of on February 9th, but 13,000 flights since 2018. 1,600 of those flights we've assisted with arrests.
Wow.
What we think is really important is that next section to the right there, calls where we have been able to avoid an actual patrol unit having to respond. So 3,429 of those calls, we were able to get overhead, go, hey, that's actually no crime occurring, or all the parties have left, or there's no crime, there's no issue. Then units that are on the ground can now be redirected to something that's more of an emergency, more of a priority. And so that is really important. And that also includes the fire response, because the fire department does have access to our footage as well, because we do respond to traffic collisions, or, you know, we're in Southern California, sometimes we have brush fires. So this also includes fire response, which can also be redirected to stuff that's more important.
That's amazing. And the pie chart in the middle, those are like, I think I'm reading this, the top 10 calls responded with the DFR. Can you just tell us a couple of those, or maybe the top three?
Yeah, so the top one is usually it's a disturbance person. So we get multiple calls about some sort of disturbance, either between neighbors or someone at a store or someone on the street. And so that's our top call. Our top call we always get is there's someone causing some sort of a disturbance. It could be two people fighting or anything. The next highest, unfortunately, is domestic violence calls. We do respond to a lot of domestic violence calls. Again, if you go on our website, we have a couple of videos, and one in particular displays a domestic violence call that the case probably would not have been issued by the DA's office had we not had the video footage of the crime occurring. And everyone was okay and everything, but those are just so really important, crucial information. So yeah, those are, and also the third one is traffic collisions. We do have, you know, like any other city, there are times when people get into traffic collisions, and sometimes they're major and sometimes they're minor. What's nice about the DFR, we don't have to worry about traffic lights stopping for traffic, trying to get around traffic. We can get overhead and we can direct fire personnel, medical personnel, so they know which best direction to come in, because it could be a major accident, it could be blocking intersections, and it's all about getting that resource to the community.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about safety, right, public safety, there's nothing more dangerous than a high-speed chase, probably. And to have a drone that can fly and maybe in pursuit of a suspect that avoids having to be on the ground, like you said, stoplights. When you think about officer safety, and you know, having that situational awareness, you know, the reason why there are use of force incidents is because usually of either protecting self or others. And to have that information in the time and space to make a decision, I imagine is invaluable. So that's just incredible. That slide's at 13,000, but you've had like over 33, right? 33,000 like DFR like responses in the
We're
like in,
actually we're actually closer to 14,000 actual responses with DFR. That doesn't include our regular, because we do have a field deployment, we do have officers in the field that are Part 107 that launch from their trucks. So we have officers check out an Advance, a DJI Mini, and they go out in the field, and then they can also respond and assist in case our DFR is just hours are not up, or they can assist in conjunction with the DFR drone.
So combined, like 33,000. That's a really important distinction, Miriam, because, especially for anyone out there that's looking to either your public safety or looking to create your own program, or you work with critical infrastructure, how do I best do something like this from a security and safety standpoint? You've got your DFR model, which I want to peel back right now. And then you've got your kind of individual deployers as well. And the fact that they work together is amazing. So Chula Vista, where you are, pretty large area. How are you mentioned rooftops. And can you describe for us like the coverage model that you have for drone as first responder or DFR?
Yes, so our city's about 52 square miles, and we have four launch locations. Here at the police department, just south of us at Bayview Hospital, another hospital, Sharp Hospital east of us, and then the Ayers Hotel. This picture here is actually our police department launch location up on our rooftop. So when our actual DFR pilot is in the DFR room, teleoperating the drone, each rooftop has an actual pilot in command, our PICs, that are making sure the drone's in good health, it's ready to go, and it's basically in standby ready mode for a call for service. It's important. We only fly the calls for service. We don't randomly patrol. We understand that was a huge concern for the community. So this is just an example of one of four locations. It gives us almost 90% coverage of the city, or 95% coverage of the city. This is a picture of our drone room. This is one of our DFR pilots, Officer Kyle Roberts, and he can launch any of the drones with this software. We use a ModalAI software to teleoperate the drone. This software also, all the officers, we all have an application on our phones that when a flight is initiated, we get a pop-up on our phone, we can select it, and we can actually see the footage, see the live footage of what's going on. And again, our fire department also has access to our footage. So they can better respond to those emergencies as well and know what to do when they are responding, what type of equipment they would need.
Well, that's amazing. And you have a really unique partnership, shall we call it, with a contractor called Flying Lion. Tell us about that relationship and how it dovetails into what we just saw, those four locations, and then your command center.
Absolutely. So when we came up with the concept with DFR, our program started all through our police foundation. Everything was funded through our police foundation. We only just got funded by the city about 2 years ago. So we had to show the city the benefit of the program, and then obviously the funding came in. So with that funding, we did an RFP, request for proposal, for pilots to staff our rooftop. And Pilots and Commands and Flying Lion Inc. won that proposal, and it's been a great partnership. So Flying Lion provides Part 107 pilots. They actually man our rooftops. They're in charge of making sure the airspace is good. There's no manned aircraft. They can take control of the drone if need be. They actually have the RC, and they just make sure the drone's in good working health. And so for our COA, our certificate of authorization with the FAA actually only recognizes the pilot in command on the rooftop. They know we have the DFR pilot, the officer that is flying the drones and manually and manipulating the gimbal and everything. But for the COA, the FAA only recognizes our PICs on the rooftop. So Flying Line has a very important role in our program and a huge role in the success of our program so far.
And for those that follow the show, last year when we were streaming to Drone Life's channels, we had Tani Smith from Flying Lion on the show. And I'm going to say that was I feel like that was in September, but all of those are also on the Dawn's Old Eye YouTube channel. So check that out if you want to see a little bit more, hear a little bit more from Tani and get the perspective of the pick. She's one of those people that has been up on those rooftops helping folks like Miriam and her team. So really, really cool. All right, so you've got this drone as first responder cadre, shall we say. You've got the Flying Lions, you've got your expert in the command center, if you will, doing doing the flying and moving the gimbal around. Can you just give us a real quick review of, as a practical matter, the 911 dispatch call comes in. How does this work from the time that call comes in to the time a drone is dispatched?
So you may be aware, we also utilize Live 911 software, which is software that was created here at Chula Vista PD, working with Higher Ground. So basically, a 911 call comes into our dispatch. It splits off. One, the call goes to dispatch, but it also goes to a software that our officers all have access to. So the officers can actually hear the 911 call as it's coming in, hear what the caller's saying. It also does a GPS location of the caller within 2 feet, which is the same technology used by Uber. And so that's beneficial, obviously, because now we have another set of ears that are helping our dispatchers who are listening, typing in the information, and then it gets transferred to a dispatcher. So we'll get a call. I'll give you an example. We had a call of a woman frantic that her child fell in the pool, and the call came in. The caller's taking in the information. The woman's very upset, can't say exactly where she's at because she's obviously dealing with this, what's going on with her child. Our officers in the field, we had an officer nearby that saw the 911 call, the live 911 call, saw the location. Our drone was at the same time, as soon as that call was coming in, hearing it on live 911, launched the drone. Within seconds, we're already en route. The pilot, the actual officer, was also responding to that call and getting to that child to provide CPR medical care to help save that child. So it's literally happening within seconds.
That's
so
amazing.
The call comes in, yeah.
So, I mean, you said Chula Vista PD collaborated with a company to create this live 911. I'm hoping that you're going to tell me this is very widespread, that lots of other people are using it now.
That's right. So again, now retired Captain Fritz Reber, this was his brainchild idea. He's a very smart man. And so
yeah, clearly.
he came up with this, he came up with this concept, got with this company, Higher Ground, and now Live 911 software is available to all public safety, all law enforcement agencies that want it, and many agencies are starting to use it and starting to see the benefit. You know, there's been so many recent incidents of like Uvalde where officers necessarily didn't know what was going on. But imagine if you can hear the live 911 calls and all the callers and hearing, okay, we hear shots, we know it's an active shooter, or because sometimes that stuff gets lost in translation.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so hard, that's after the fact, but think of maybe an agency like that having that technology, maybe it could have made a difference, and could have helped some, because obviously that was just such a tough situation to have to go through. So having that information and being able to have more ears, hopefully picking out all the important things that we need to hear to better address the emergency.
Now let's connect that to your DFR program, and even we're going to talk about your kind of mobile pilots on the ground, separate from that, but that also work with your DFR group. Do they have live 911? So in other words, your Flying Lion folks up on the roof, your pick, your command post, if you will, your command center and DFR pilot. Do they all have that coming in too, where they can hear this live call and say, drone, go?
So our Flying Lion does not have access to it, because their job is to make sure, the pilot commands to make sure the drone and the airspace and everything is good, is safe as far as the flight operations.
Gotcha.
They make sure the drone's good. As far as the DFR pilot, yes, they have access to live 911, and many times the drone pilot, the DFR pilot will actually be flying en route to the call before it actually even gets dispatched to ground units because they heard the 911 call coming in. And so we
Wow.
can get to that emergency quicker, knowing this information's coming in, knowing what type of call. And it's also important that we, for the DFR pilots, an experienced officer that knows the city, knows tactics, understands the incident command structure because they become the incident commander and they direct the units that are responding to that emergency.
Wow, that's just amazing. So tell us about your, how would you characterize your other unit or folks that have the drones but are not part of the DFR program technically? What do you call them, Miriam?
So they are, we call them, well, we have about 25 actual drone pilots that it's a collateral duty and
Okay.
they are separate from DFR, but they are also under the UAS umbrella. So they are detectives, they are traffic motor officers, they are patrol officers. They work in various units within the city, but they also are drone Part 107 pilots. So, for example, our traffic officers that are pilots, they will deploy the drones if they get called out for a major traffic accident where they have to do traffic, crime scene reconstruction, and they use the drones for with the 3D mapping software. And so our pilots will launch the drone and be able to, shave off hours of time using that. This is a picture of one of our pilots. She's actually a school resource officer, but on her collateral job is also a UAS pilot. So when she goes in the field as a school resource officer, she takes her drone in the field. She also can assist on calls as well, in addition to DFR.
Wow. And so, most people, if you're not from law enforcement, if you're not involved in it, may not appreciate all those things you just said, like all the different, let's just call them departments, or like in the Air Force, we call them Air Force specialty codes, right? You have your missileer, you have your security forces, you have what I was, a JAG, right? Judge advocate, the lawyers. You have, like you said, this school resource officers, you have traffic specific, crime scene investigators. And I know you've done so many of these jobs, different duties, Miriam, really interesting. So these folks, they raise their hand and say like, hey, I'm a crime scene investigator, CSI, and I would like to learn how to fly a drone because this could be very interesting. I imagine certain crime scenes, a drone would be critical. I'll give you one example. I remember when I was in the Air Force, Miriam, this is a true story. We are our law enforcement, we have our security forces, we also have our Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI, and they're like the FBI equivalent, right? So whereas our security forces is like Chula Vista PD equivalent. Um, OSI calls me one day and says, we have a suicide up in a tree and we want to fly a drone to like because they have to capture the scene. And they're like, we can't get imagery of this without a drone. So, I mean, awful scenario, but like it was almost impossible otherwise to capture that scene and what had happened. I mean, I'm talking way up in a tree. So, um, so, so how many of these different officers do you have?
We have 25 officers that are also, it's a collateral, they're on our UAS team as a collateral duty.
Right.
And so that is a great example. We have dozens of those examples. A couple of years back, we had a individual that called us and said that he had murdered his wife and he was barricaded in his home with long weapons like rifles and stuff. So we called our SWAT team, our negotiators, and we called out our drone team because obviously we didn't want to put anyone close to the door. He
Right.
had, he claiming of his, he had long guns and stuff like that, rifles and shotguns. So what we were able to do is our drone pilots were able to get a couple of like an advance and a mini up to the windows, up to to give our SWAT team a better view, to kind of get a feel for what we were dealing with as we were also negotiating with him. So that's another example. And these were our drone pilots, our UAS pilots were detectives and other units but they were called out to help with this particular scene. So the example you gave with the Air Force, yeah, those things happen unfortunately a lot, and drones can be used in so many ways. But and our chief always says it's not a replacement for officers; it's just an enhancement. It helps us do our jobs better for the community.
So interesting too. I would think the perspectives that these different experts bring to being a pilot and to what they're looking for when they use that drone or how they're using it. I imagine a CSI would have a much kind of keener, different eye on a particular crime scene than maybe, obviously your school resource person. So I think that's really spectacular that you have all of these opportunities for people to raise their hand. Now, Miriam, you said when you started this program, when I guess Fritz started the program back in 2017, it was catch as catch can, like using basically a nonprofit fund and donations to get it going. And now the city has seen the benefits of the program and actually is funding you all. That's amazing. I'm sure so many other agencies out there could learn wonderful lessons from that journey. What were the top things that, in kind of educating the city leaders as to why this is so important, or explaining the benefits? What were like the top 3 or 5 that you all were able to basically communicate to them to convince them that, like, yes, here's money now, because we know how tight and constrained resources are. Here's money to support this program?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, any law enforcement agency that is looking to start a program like this, you got to get your chief of police on board. We were so blessed. Chief Kennedy, she's very innovative and she's open to new and crazy ideas. And had we not had our chief's backing, the program would not be here today.
Yeah.
And so the chief was the one that was also helping us, and with her experience of a chief of police, hey, these are the things you need to do. We need to get our community involved. So get your chief involved, get your chief on board, get your community involved, show them what you're trying to do, explain to them what you're trying to do some public forums, get some discussions, have that conversation, so you can even see if it's even feasible for your community, because it may not be at that time, depending on what's going on, and because every community is a different dynamic and different makeup. um, do the crawl, walk, run type approach. You don't have to start off with just 4 launch locations like we did. We actually started off at the police department, and that was the only launch location we had for a while, because we wanted to kind of work out the kinks, figure out how we were going to work this out, how this was going to work, what were the hours, and how we could utilize the program. So take your time, figure it out where you want to start launching from, and then start doing that. And then also success stories. Share your success stories with your community, and your city officials, your elected officials. That's what we did. We had early on some videos that you'll see on our website that we shared to show, listen, this is a great benefit. Look what we were able to do, and do it safely, and get a weapon off the streets, or determine that it was a BB gun and not really a real gun. And so, share those success stories, and then be transparent. If you can get this information on your website, make sure your community understands, you've already talked to them, but you also want to have it there really accessible. We pride ourselves on that transparency. We think it's important because our community's trust is important to us.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I love also not only the focus on transparency and community engagement, but also privacy. I remember, Miriam, when you were speaking with Maggie, you said that when you are returned to home, that gimbal is facing up. In other words, like, hey, we're not pointing our camera down and scanning the whole neighborhood the entire way home, right? So
That's right.
I think, yeah, there are definitely lessons learned about privacy and data retention and, minimization of what you're collecting on and things like this that everybody could benefit from. By the way, everybody out there, I know Brendan Groves from Skydio was involved when he was in the DOJ. But the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Agency, put out some best practices for the federal government. But, a lot of that translates over, and these are the things that we're talking about here. So great stuff. So, Miriam, we are getting short on time. I knew our time would fly. No pun intended. I want to ask you, as you look to the future, you guys have come so far in so short a period of time, from drone as first responder, one on the roof, to 4 locations, to getting city funding, to having a bunch of extra duty or collateral duty personnel also now as drone pilots. And I would be remiss, we didn't talk about this, Miriam, but I hope everybody knows that it was Chula Vista that really spearheaded that tactical BV loss, beyond visual line of sight waiver with the FAA, that process. That was huge too. You guys, like I said, have been groundbreaking in all of these things. What's up next on the horizon? Like, you've done so much. What do you see coming down the pike for your police department, hopefully others, in the next year, maybe 3, maybe 5?
Yes. You're right. We should have mentioned thank you to FAA because they really, we when we got involved, we got lucky and got involved early on during the IPP, and so that was kind of like how we got our foot in the door. And then I know the FAA was like, oh my goodness, what is Children Vista thinking? So we're so thankful that they were trusting in us. We showed the safety case. We showed all the things that we were going to do to keep everything safe, and so thankful to the FAA because I know we wouldn't be here now without their collaboration and trusting in us. So for us, what we're thinking, I mean, we would love to put a drone in the box solution at every fire station in the city. And we know the drone in the box solution is coming forward. Remote ID, sense and avoid, that's all coming forward. So we're hoping that's all going to get together, and that's going to really, the FAA is going to feel comfortable with that. We will put it on every launch, every fire station, because fire stations are strategically placed based on calls for service. So we can have a drone that can get overhead, shorter distance, be overhead longer because it's less distance to fly, and be able to get that information. So in our minds, everything will be automated, only for calls for service. Priority call comes in, the drone is connected to our computer-aided dispatch. It wakes up. The pilot in the DFR room goes, oh, launch fire station 2's drone is launching for a call. Boom, that launches and it goes to the call. The pilot takes over, maneuvers the drone, live streams the information that needs to be live streamed, and then when they RTH, gimbal goes back up to the horizon, the drone goes back, sits in its box, and it's nice, and it gets checked, all the functions checked, all the pre-flights checked, like every time there's a flight that would do that. So we're hoping in the future, and we think that's definitely I think it's gonna happen. We feel it's gonna happen. The technology's there. It's just all has to get there in due time and when it's supposed to. So we would love to, we're hoping for that in the future.
Well, I'm hoping too, and if anyone's going to make it happen, it's going to be you, Miriam, and your team, because you've already, you all have made so many things happen so far. And for those that don't know, IPP is the Integration Pilot Program, R&D program with the FAA, which is now beyond Chula Vista, still very much involved in that. I imagine this drone in a box solution, as drone as DFR, is kind of that next wave, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. We are kind of at the end of our time, and I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. Before I do, I want to brag on Miriam one last time before we hang up. For those that don't know, Miriam was a recipient of the Women in Drones Women to Watch in Emerging Technologies Awards this year. So congratulations for that. Got to meet her in person at CES, so that was quite amazing personally for me. And one last quick shout out, I do want to give a note. We just had ModalAI's logo up there. They are endowing this episode kindly and supporting Chula Vista PD, Miriam's appearance on today's show. So thank you, ModalAI, and of course, Dragonfly for sponsoring the entire month as well. So Miriam, last 30 seconds, the floor is yours to close us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I meant to tell you, thank you for your military service. And I know you also received the Women to Watch Award in year past. So congratulations to you. And it was wonderful meeting you. I would just say, keep pushing forward. You reach out to us if you have questions. You can reach out to me through our city's website. But keep pushing forward. The technology's there. As long as we're doing it safely in the right way, it will be great. So stay safe, everyone, and thank you for having me.
We are out here.